Why does anything feel like anything? The mystery of consciousness. Why does anything feel like anything? There is something happening at this moment that may be stranger than anything we have discovered in space. You are conscious. Light is reaching your eyes, sound is moving through the air, and electrical signals are traveling through networks of living cells inside your skull. These events can be measured and described, yet they are also accompanied by a private experience. You see color, hear a voice, and recognize yourself as the person having those experiences. We understand parts of the machinery behind this. Scientists can trace signals through the brain, record neurons firing, and observe which regions become active when someone remembers a face, imagines a place, or makes a decision. What remains difficult to explain is why any of this should be accompanied by an inner life. Why does the activity of the brain feel like something from the inside? For most of cosmic history, as far as we know, there was no life. The early universe contained radiation, simple particles, and expanding space. Gravity gathered matter into stars, and those stars produced the heavier elements from which planets and living organisms would eventually be made. On at least one planet, matter became organized into living cells. Some of those organisms developed nervous systems, and over immense spans of evolutionary time, certain nervous systems became complex enough to perceive, remember, and think. At some point in that history, subjective experience appeared. There was pain and pleasure, color, fear, hunger, memory, and curiosity became part of the universe. Physical events were no longer only happening somewhere, they were being experienced. This is the mystery of consciousness. It can seem ordinary because it has been present throughout almost every waking moment of our lives. We never encounter the world without it. Every object we see, every thought we examine, and every scientific measurement we make appears within consciousness. That makes it unusually difficult to study. We cannot step outside our own awareness and observe it from an independent position. Consciousness is both the thing being investigated and the means by which the investigation takes place. Imagine that we could study a human brain in perfect detail. Every cell, connection, and electrical impulse could be recorded. With enough information, we might predict what a person would say, where they would look, and how they would react when shown a familiar face. We might even identify exactly what happens in the brain when that person sees the color red. But this would still leave another question. Would a complete description of the brain explain why red looks the way it does? The wavelength of light can be measured, and the resulting neural activity can be observed. The experience itself cannot be removed from the person and displayed to someone else. It is available only to the individual having it. The philosopher David Chalmers described this distinction as the difference between the relatively accessible problems of consciousness and what he called the hard problem. The accessible problems are not simple. Scientists still have much to learn about attention, memory, perception, and the changes that occur between sleep and wakefulness. However, these questions are concerned mainly with functions, how the brain selects information, responds to its surroundings, and guides behavior. The hard problem asks why those functions are accompanied by experience at all. A camera can detect light, while a computer can identify objects within an image and produce a description of them. These systems process information, but it is not clear whether processing information is enough to create consciousness. Does the system actually see anything, or is the calculation taking place without an inner point of view? One influential explanation is known as global neuronal workspace theory. It begins with the observation that most activity in the brain never enters our awareness. The brain regulates the body, filters sensory information, and prepares movements without requiring us to experience every stage of the process. According to workspace theories, some information becomes conscious when it is made widely available across the brain. Once broadcast through a larger network, it can be used by memory, language, planning, and decision-making. This may help explain why consciousness usually feels unified. The brain is carrying out vast numbers of processes at once, yet we experience a single organized scene rather than an unmanageable collection of disconnected signals. Another approach, integrated information theory, starts with the structure of experience. A conscious moment contains many elements, but they appear together. When we look at the sea, color, movement, distance, and sound do not arrive as entirely separate experiences. They form one scene. The theory proposes that consciousness is related to the ability of a system to integrate information so completely that the whole cannot be reduced to independent parts. Under this view, consciousness may not be an additional property placed on top of information processing. It may arise from the particular way information is connected within a system. Other theories take different approaches. Some suggest that a mental state becomes conscious when the brain represents itself as having that state. Others emphasize recurring loops of activity between different brain regions. Predictive processing theories describe the brain as a system that constantly anticipates the causes of incoming signals and updates its model of the world when those predictions are wrong. Each of these ideas helps to explain certain features of consciousness, but none has yet provided an answer accepted across neuroscience and philosophy. It may be that an important concept is still missing. For centuries, many thinkers believed that life could not be explained by ordinary physical processes. Living organisms appeared to possess a special force or essence that non-living matter lacked. As biology developed, that assumption became unnecessary. Chemistry, evolution, and natural selection showed how complex organisms could arise without the addition of a separate life force. Consciousness may eventually be understood in a similar way. What currently seems impossible to explain might become clearer when science has better theories and better ways of testing them. There is, however, another possibility. Our description of matter itself may be incomplete. Physics is extraordinarily successful at explaining how things behave. It describes relationships, forces, quantities, and changes with remarkable precision, yet it does not necessarily tell us what physical things are in themselves beyond the properties we can measure. We know how an electron behaves in an electromagnetic field and how it interacts with other particles. Asking what an electron ultimately is, apart from all its measurable relationships, leads away from experimental physics and towards philosophy. This has led some thinkers to question whether consciousness is simply a late addition to an otherwise unconscious universe. One family of views, often associated with panpsychism, proposes that experience may have very simple foundations within reality itself. The claim is not that rocks have thoughts or that stars possess minds like ours. Instead, it suggests that the basic ingredients from which consciousness develops may be more widespread than complex brains. A brain could organize these primitive elements into the rich and unified awareness familiar to human beings, just as living systems organize non-living molecules into functioning cells. This avoids the problem of consciousness appearing suddenly from something entirely unlike it. However, it creates another difficulty known as the combination problem. Even if extremely simple parts of nature possess some primitive form of experience, why should many of them combine into one mind? Why does the activity of billions of neurons produce a single point of view rather than countless separate centers of awareness? There is currently no agreed answer. The mystery becomes even more complicated when we consider the self. Most of us feel that there is a stable observer behind our thoughts, a continuous me who remembers the past, experiences the present, and expects to continue into the future. Yet neuroscientists have found no single center in the brain where this observer appears to reside. There is no obvious control room in which a separate self watches incoming information. The sense of being a person may instead be produced by several interacting processes. Memory provides continuity, bodily sensation gives us a location, emotion creates significance, and imagination allows us to place ourselves in the past and future. The self may therefore be less like a permanent object and more like an activity that the brain continually maintains. That would not make it unreal. A whirlpool is real, even though the water passing through it is constantly changing. Its identity lies in the pattern, rather than in a fixed collection of material. A person may be similar. The atoms in the body change, memories are altered whenever they are recalled, and personality develops over time. Awareness disappears during dreamless sleep and later returns without any sense of the missing interval. Despite all these changes, a recognizable pattern continues. This leads to one of the most difficult questions consciousness creates. What happens when that pattern ends? Science can observe the processes that support awareness and determine what happens when the brain can no longer maintain them. It can measure the loss of organized activity and the breakdown of the systems required for perception and thought. What science cannot provide is a direct observation of subjective absence. We can observe another person becoming permanently unresponsive and conclude that their experience has ended. But no one can experience the complete absence of experience and report what it was like. Whenever we try to imagine non-existence, we usually picture darkness, silence, or empty space. Yet each of these is still an experience. Darkness must be seen, silence must be noticed, and emptiness must appear to someone. Consciousness can represent almost anything, but it cannot represent its own complete absence without quietly placing an observer back into the scene. This may be one reason the idea of non-existence is so difficult to grasp. It is not necessarily evidence that consciousness continues. It may simply reveal a limitation in the way a conscious mind imagines. For now, we do not know whether consciousness is produced only by biological brains, whether it could also emerge within a sufficiently advanced machine, or whether it reflects something more fundamental about reality. We do not know precisely when it appeared during evolution. We cannot say with confidence which animals possess which kinds of experience, and we have no evidence that consciousness exists anywhere beyond Earth. What we do know is that it exists here. Elements forged inside ancient stars now form living beings capable of studying those stars. Matter has become organized into minds that can question the nature of matter itself. The universe has produced something able to ask why there is a universe. A future theory may explain consciousness entirely through physical processes. It may show that awareness follows naturally whenever matter is organized in a particular way. Alternatively, consciousness may force us to revise some of our most basic assumptions about what physical reality contains. Either possibility would transform our understanding of existence. We search distant galaxies for evidence of other minds, and we study the smallest particles in an effort to understand the foundations of nature. Yet, the most immediate mystery is present before every telescope reading, laboratory result, and philosophical question. It is the fact that there is an experience occurring at all. The mystery is not only that the universe exists, it is that, in at least one small part of it, existence has become aware of itself.